Welcome to History Focus, focusing on some of the world's most interesting historical topics. So on the 24th of February, Russia invaded Ukraine. However, to understand this topic, we really have to look at the history.
Теперь такого, как Путин, такого, как Путин, полного сил, такого, как Путин.
Но очень рассчитываю на то, что все-таки здравый смысл восторжествует.
Россия будет свободной! Россия будет свободной! Россия будет свободной! Россия будет свободной!
This is Ukraine, and this is Russia in 2021. They are neighbors sharing 2,295 kilometers of border. However, their history has had its fair share of conflict. And now in 2022, those borders are being disputed again. So, you might have thought that this was the first time that the Ukrainians have fought for their independence, but actually, sadly, that's not the case. We have to look at history to see how it's repeating itself. So let's rewind. I guess the question always is, how far back can you go? But for the sake of this video, we will start with the establishment of the medieval state of the Kievan Rus. The modern nations of Belarus, Russia and Ukraine all claim the Kievan Rus as their cultural ancestors, with Belarus and Russia actually taking part of their name. It was a loose federation of East Slavic, Baltic and Finnic people in Eastern and Northern Europe, from the 9th to the mid-13th century. Its first ruler, Prince Oleg, actually moved his capital to Kiev. The state began to decline during the late 11th and 12th century, disintegrating into various rival regional powers. And this leads us to the first invasion of the Ukrainian people, when the Mongols invaded in 1240 and destroyed the state of the Kievan Rus. During this time, the present-day Ukrainian territories came under the rule of three external powers: the Golden Horde, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania and the Kingdom of Poland, and the Crimean Khanate. Fast forward to 1793, when the bulk of what is now Ukraine came under the Russian Empire under Catherine the Great. Ukraine became a smaller brother, a subordinate part of a greater empire. Then, during the Russian Revolution that ushered in the Soviet Union, Ukraine fought for independence again, and it lost. In 1922, it was subsumed into the huge communist state that is the USSR. But it still had its own language and its own status. Within a decade, Joseph Stalin feared the independent-minded Ukrainians. This led to the Holodomor, a dark period of repression and suffering for the Ukrainian people. In Ukrainian, Holodomor means the extermination from hunger. It led to 4 million Ukrainians being starved to death, which was planned and executed by the Soviet state. Stalin's extent to exterminate any Ukrainianness was extreme. He even went as far as exterminating a single letter from the Ukrainian alphabet to make it sound more Russian. But now you can see how the oppression of the Ukrainian people and their fight for nationhood wasn't just a Stalinist policy, but also a Mongol and a Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth policy, a Tsarist policy, and now a policy under the Putin administration. So history is literally repeating itself, and the long struggle for Ukrainian independence continues. And that's why next week I'll be on the border with Hungary and Ukraine to tell you stories of refugees and volunteers alike. So stay tuned and subscribe to the next video. That's History Focus. See you next time.